to get to you today. So
Okay.
that makes me happy.
Yay!
Okay, so same thing as last time. You go up and click on the screen share. We'll go through your images, and then we'll have some one-on-one time.
All right, so clicking on the screen share button. Um, it's given me like 7 choices. I'm trying to pick the right one.
Yeah, so you want to pick whatever this screen is that's going to actually have your images, whatever the program is you're using to showcase them. There we go.
Okay, and then it's FF. Oh, wait, no, that's not the right one. Hold on. Ah!
Cool. Okay. So it's on your screen. So tell me a little bit about making the images and where you're at right now, and then I'm gonna grade you on 0 to 3.
Okay. Um, well, this when I was approached with trying to come up with 20 images for my portfolio, it was hard for me because I had just gone through this whole change of where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my art. And so I was trying to pull away from fashion and editorial and try and really, really hone in on doing emotionally connective work because that's where I want to go. And I also wanted my work to, I'm trying to get it to transcend photography and go into more multimedia and definitely more storytelling. And I went through my old work to see if I had anything in the past that represented where I was, but I didn't know what to do with it at the time. And so of the images that I chose, I have 2 that were from the past that I never shot it intending to do anything with it, but looking at it now, it speaks to who I am, almost like peaks of what I really wanted to do were coming in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 images that are working towards where I am and where I'm going. With this image, it was a really, really close friend of mine at the time. She had come down to visit me. She was modeling, and she wanted to do something that was a little bit risque. She had twins. She gained a lot of weight, and she had just lost a bunch of it after years and years of holding on to this weight. And so she wanted to do these really kind of surreal, intense nudes at the time. And she had gotten a phone call, and that phone call ended up being her husband calling to tell her that they were getting a divorce. And in this image, you see her closing the cell phone from that conversation. So while she was having the conversation, she went from being this really happy, cheerful, chipper woman that we were taking all these images to this really sad, depressed person. And at the time, I didn't even know what the phone call was about. I could just see her draining. And
Mm.
I didn't know what to do. And so I just kept shooting. And I was like, well, maybe she wants to see what's going on, or I got really, really panicky. And so I was like, well, I'll just do it. And that's what I did. And I just kept shooting so she could hear the clicking of the camera and and it almost put her in this kind of calmer place, even though she was getting this horrifying phone call. And this frame is her closing the cell phone. That's what you see. Her hand is in that weird position. It's her closing that cell phone. And it ended up being the most poignant image of all of the images that I captured, and the both of us really loved it. So it's called Prison.
This is a really powerful image, even without knowing the backstory. I definitely think that you captured exactly that kind of emotion, that kind of isolated desolation. And And I think that's really strong. And I think that's really, really hard for a lot of photographers to do. And we talked about that a lot in level 4. And I saw that in your work when I invited you. You're not afraid to get into the darkness, and you're not afraid to get your hands dirty as an artist and create images that are um, not pretty and not, not concepts that are pretty. And I actually really like that about you, because there's something that's a little bit disturbing about your work visually and in the emotional effect that it has, that I think is part of what makes you really strong as an artist, because I think that you have to be willing to tap into pain in order to really, really move people, and you do that. And I think that's really courageous of you. Um,
Thank you.
it changes a lot of my critique, because this is being shot photojournalist rather than as a post session. If it was a post session, and or not knowing the behind the scenes and assuming that you created this shot, with intention, I would tell you that her arms need to be separated from her body a little bit, getting a little bit of triangle of space and some of that rim light in between, like the inside of her stomach and the edge of her arm would have taken out the weight. She kind of has this little bit of a potato shape going on. And that's because of the dark feeling of it. There's no separation in her midsection from her thighs to her stomach to her arms, so we lose all of her figure. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that, and I probably would have pulled her. I like the hunched over posing and the feeling that it gives, but I would have just pulled her jaw away a little bit so we could have seen a little bit more of the line of the neck. It would have been a little bit more flattering, and I would have liked to have seen just a little bit of that light come across her face, so we could maybe see, aside from the outline of her nose, like you, this beautiful rim light on her shoulder and the front of her thighs and her hands. I would have liked to have seen just a little bit of that on the face, and maybe just the hint of the eyes, just to give her face some value, because it's very, very silhouetted, but the fact that you're picking up the light elsewhere makes me want it there too. But I love the darkness. I love that there's no walls. I love that it's just that even outside the windows looks dark and dreary, as without, so within is kind of the feeling that you're getting. Like everything that's going on outside of her is just mirroring what's going on internally with her. And I think that's really powerful. I love the stripped bed, and the fact that her sitting in the center of it is creating these leading lines that are kind of pouring into her, almost like whirlpool like everything is centering. Like she's so heavy emotionally right now that she's literally gravitationally pulling everything else into herself like a black hole, and I think that's really strong. um I think this is a really strong image for you, Ava. I'm going to give it a 3. I think it's exceptional for the work, especially considering what we were seeing at level 4. I'm seeing a lot of growth and a lot more tapping in, and for this being um, an older image and not something newly created, I think that's speaking a lot to your ability to see which images you have that are potent. And I think you were struggling with that a little bit at the beginning, with understanding which ones really had the potential to move people, and this one definitely does. So well done.
Thank you.
All right, next image. Okay, tell me about this one.
Okay, this is another one of my older images. It's called Espiritu. Um, I had gotten on this kick for a little while of trying to recreate what the actual intentions behind holidays are. And
Okay.
I didn't want to do something that everybody knew or everybody completely understood. So I went with Day of the Dead, and
Okay.
I had a makeup friend of mine. She love the concept, and we were coming up with a ghost, and we were going to take her to a cemetery, and we were going to have her walk through and kind of, but have her dressed up in traditional Mexican garb and have her designed as Day of the Dead, but to make her stand out so she doesn't look exactly how we see people celebrating. And so
Mm-hmm.
we came up with this asymmetrical design because of the idea that ghosts mimic who we were, but they are not exactly human. And so they would connect to us in a way we would understand without actually looking exactly like us. And I took the image kind of from the perspective of her being the ghost. So she was walking through the image, and I was shooting her as she was walking. Um, and then she came to this point where she stopped and the wind was blowing her, and she just stared at me for a second before she kept walking on. And so that's kind of how we have the image where she's in focus, and some of you can see like the sleeve of her blouse is kind of moving and blowing and not entirely in focus. And then I went in and worked on the colors to kind of show you where you were, but made it a little bit more surreal.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted it to be a happy place. I don't think people understand the concept of how it's supposed to be a beautiful thing, the Day of the Dead, where the ghosts come back and they rejoice with you, not just life, but the experience of life. And I think that that's what she shows, that she's there and she's very comfortable and happy to be in this place, even though it's a cemetery. And
Right.
so that's it. That's kind of where I was with it.
I'm um I'm very conflicted about this image for you because I do think that this is a really strong image. So I think that you totally nailed her and your connection to her, and that's really hard. In my book, I talk a lot about the fact that if you can't get a strong connection and eye contact where you feel like she's looking at you, because that's really hard to do because they're not looking at you, they're looking at a piece of equipment. So for them to make an emotional connection with a viewer that wasn't actually there when the image was taken it takes a lot of connection between the photographer and the model and the presence of mind that the model has while she's there. And you killed it in this one. It's very piercing, but also very peaceful and solemn. There's a lot going on. It's got very extreme and intense artistic makeup, but it doesn't overpower her face. I think that it adds to it. And I've seen that go both ways. So I love her in this image. I love the composition of the cemetery behind her. I have to be totally honest. I hate the retouching on this. I think you're completely distracting away from the potency of the image. And it's not 100%. I love that you're being bold and you're playing with the colors and you're retouching techniques, but it looks like what I see a lot of new photographers do when they're overcompensating with their post-processing to make up for a bad photo, and this is not a bad photo. This is a really good photo. The exposure is beautiful on her face. You have this kind of really unexpected natural butterfly light going on in this glamour photography going on with her skin being really smooth. And then we have this like highlight of purple coming through her hair, and it's so distracting right around the edge of her hairline, and it's not blending in easy enough. And I think it's just the dichotomy of the purple and the pink and the green trying to play off each other, which definitely lends to like the zombie, like we say when we're sick, like, you're kind of green around the gills, but I think it's a little bit too extreme here. There's a couple of splotches of like pink in the trees right behind her to her left cheek that pull me away from her face. So I'm not a big fan of the color choices that you went and the way that you overlaid it. I like the shallow depth of field, but it's a little bit muddy for me, and I think that's distracting, and it would almost work better like her sleeve is throwing it off for me.
Okay.
because everything behind her is so muddy, but then her face is so sharp, but then for some reason, just this one splotch on the sleeve, it looks like you were just being careless with the retouching. So if it's not like that in the original image, I would be inclined to go back and let that remain sharp along with the rest of her.
Okay.
That said, I do think that your color process is beautiful on her face until we get to her hair. That's where it annoys me.
Okay.
But I love the purple tips along the flower and how it pulls you into her face and how she has this really beautiful kind of glamorous um, lighting and makeup, even though she looks dead. You know, like it's both. Like you accomplished both, and it's hard to make dead and um, you know, like that sallow kind of skin look really glamorous and beautiful without it distracting from it, which is what I see a lot when people try to do like Day of the Dead makeup. They're either too pretty or they're not pretty enough. Like it's a really hard balance to strike, and I think that you got it in this one. Um, I still really like the image overall, and I think the concept for it is great. But I can't get over these blotches of purple and pink throughout. That's killing it for me. So
Okay.
it I'd be interested to see you retouch this one again and start from scratch if you have the original file and play with it again, and maybe not worry so much about this kind of like sepia oversaturated. I don't even know what to call it, but it's like a duotone thing, and it's not bad. It's totally me because somebody else is going to tell you they love it, but I don't, and I'm the one grading you. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you 2. I do think it's commendable. I do think you did a really good job with it. I love the composition. I love her expression. I love the energy she's giving. You just have to get rid of the pink and the purple because all I can think is Pepto-Bismol right now. It's killing it for me.
Okay.
Um, so I do think it's a commendable one, and I do think it had the potential to be exceptional and probably one of my favorite images that I've seen from you so far. It's glorious in the connection and in the whole composition of it. It's just the retouching that's bothering me. That's my only hang up with it. So
Okay.
well done.
Yay.
Okay, next one.
All right. Okay, so as you know, I've been trying to go hiking more and kind of get into the health thing, but I've also wanted to incorporate more of nature into some of the storytelling of my work. I didn't want it to all be studio.
Mm,
And so I was walking around Mount Mitchell in a place called Craggy Gardens. And as we were walking up, it's a pretty steep hike, but it's only 3/4 of a mile. But as we were walking up, we went from crystal clear, no clouds, beautiful sun, everything at the bottom, to increasing fog as we're going up this up the mountain. And so Jess, who is the model that you see here, she's walking around and she's like, this is kind of getting a little creepy. She's like, what is it that every time we go hiking, all of a sudden clouds attack us? And it is this kind of thing that just kept happening. And she started hiking ahead of me to see if there was some clearing. And as I was coming up with all of this equipment attached to me, she had sat down as she came back, and she was just kind of pissed because it was even more cloudy up top. And so I love this little curve that she had sat down on, and I was like, put your sneakers behind you. Nobody wants to see your horrible sneakers. And I just started shooting as the fog was just coming in, and she was just staring up at it because right above the top of the clouds, you couldn't see anything but, I mean, at the top of the trees, you couldn't see anything but clouds. And so she had this kind of nervous, scared, annoyed look on her face.
mm-hmm.
And I was shooting it, and I was like, no, just stay with that. And anytime she kind of fell out of it, I kept talking to her about how annoying and funny this situation was to kind of help her keep her there. And
Right.
this is the only image where you can kind of see that it's foggy and um, a little bit,
Eerie.
yeah, without it being
Yeah.
overpowering or not enough.
Yeah, and
So,
I love the retouching on this because there's no pink. Um, so I think that this whatever you did here would be much stronger in the last image. So food for thought. But as far as this image goes, I want to tell you that I was seeing the potential for this in your level 4 critique, and I'm so excited to see it coming to fruition because your connection with your models right now is intense. Like it's really powerful. And you can see it even in this one, like the emotive quality that's coming through the image that we can tell exactly how she's feeling is really strong, even though she's not connecting with the camera. Like this is a very voyeuristic kind of image where it's like you just happened upon it and took it and she's not even aware that you're there. So to have that kind of emotional um power in a shot that she's able to exude that without actually acknowledging the existence of the photographer and by extension the viewer when they view the image, that's really hard to do. This is definitely a strength of viewers, and I'm really happy to see you not only playing to that but really mastering it, because it was something that I was really pushing for you in the earlier levels. So I'm seeing tons of growth there. I love this image as a whole. It does have that kind of, it's eerie, but it's not scary. And I really like that. Like there's something um, mystical about it, I think, that's really strong. I love the color scheme, and it's got this almost monochromatic kind of feel to it because all of the colors are in this sort of blue-green wash that I like. And you have this sort of natural vignette going on where you've got the lake coming behind her from down the trail and just a little bit up in that top corner. And then with all the trees and the plant and the foliage, the texture and just the direction of the branches are kind of naturally haloing around her and creating this natural vignette, which is bringing you right to her, which I really love. I would probably go in and darken that top corner just to complete the effect, because the only thing that's causing my eye to jump away from her is that spot of bright white in that top corner. And I think it's distracting. I like the idea that the light is coming from down the path and not necessarily from overhead. Um, so I would be inclined to go in and just dodge and burn and play a little bit and turn the contrast down in that top corner to kind of match it a little bit to the other side. Um, and I might go in and just punch her up just a little bit more just to separate her from her background because we're losing a little bit of the bottom of the dress into the texture. I'd like to see a little bit more of that back foot that we're losing in the shadow from it being underneath the dress. Again, same thing. I would have either pulled that the arm that's closest to us out a little bit so we could see a little bit of triangle of space, or in contrast, you kind of have her arm like sitting and resting across her thigh. If you had pulled that in really tight and around her stomach, it would have flattered her figure more because her arm wouldn't be in front of her chest. So we would have gotten the curve of the breasts and it would have pulled in nice and tight around the waist to slenderize the waist. And the other thing is that body language, if you have this almost doe-eyed, um, intimidated kind of emotion that you're giving, our body language states that anytime we feel uncomfortable, you'll see people cross their arms. They hold themselves. It's a protective nature. So having her really curve that arm around would have just added to the element of the fact that she was being protective and, that she's in this unfamiliar place where something is off. Um, where your intuition is kicking in, but you can't tell why. But overall, I think this is a really beautiful image, and I'm just loving the new work that I'm seeing. So with where we were at 4 until where we are now and what I'm seeing in your work, this one's going to get an exceptional from me too. I think you're really just making leaps and bounds of progress. Well done.
woohoo! Yay!
All right. Okay. Tell me about this one.
Okay, so I still don't entirely know why yet, but For a long time, I keep coming back in the studio to working with white backdrops and highlight and doing high key, different types of high key where the light's coming from behind or the sides or the top. I just I like the isolationist quality that comes from it, but at the same time, I still feel like the people are very, very connected. And this time around, I decided that if I was going to revisit it, that I wanted to work with movement and people's personal self-expression. So I wanted them to I wanted them to not follow necessarily a direction by me to emote, but I wanted me to give them more of themselves. And it was a challenge because for the most part, I am used to directing people to give me what I'm looking for. And
Mm.
it's kind of harder to tell somebody to be themselves and then still get them to be to give an emotional quality that's true to themselves as opposed to standing there confused. And so these last two images are from that series. And
Okay.
in this particular image, this is the same model just from the image before. And she's also the same model from my level 4 critique where I did the really close up of her face. And so she has this feeling constantly of her past catching up to her and trying to drag her back to where she was. And she said that she didn't know how to kind of get rid of it. She said she didn't want to do the Running Man in front of my backdrop. So and so I said, well, if you're trying to shake them off you, then why don't you just shake? So she started swinging back and forth, and she kept thinking to herself about actually whipping all of her enemies off her, is what she was saying that she was thinking about.
Okay.
And she asked me to keep calling her name in anger or upset, like if I was a parent scolding her. And so I just kept saying her name over and over again while she would flip back and forth. And then this is the image that we ended up capturing of that, where she's in this movement where she looks like she's, really going to this place of light, and she's been distracted and she doesn't like it.
Okay.
She doesn't like that she's being pulled away from that. But at the same
Gotcha.
time, you can see in her body there isn't this tenseness of anger. I think that she comes across more of just this distracted frustration. And me knowing her as well as I do, I really think that this does speak to who she is. I also kind of, in my own way, kind of like the Blade Runner or anime manga feel that you get in some of the cartoons and movies that I personally love. So it definitely spoke to my own aesthetic and the things that I really like
Hmm.
in female characters, almost in a sense, because she has this heroine quality about her, which it was
I do
amazing
agree
to
to
pull
that.
out.
She's
So,
she's looking very similar to there's an image of Kate Beckinsale in the movie where she's the vampire. What is it?
oh yes,
Underworld.
yes, Underworld.
Yeah, this is very reminiscent of, but that's a much darker image. So it's interesting to see that translated as a high key kind of thing. Um, I'm liking the motion. I love the light on her front arm and how defined all the muscle and the tension of her fingers and up her arm and her elbow is. You're not getting that because of the way that you have it lit with the backhand, but you kind of have everything in focus. You were probably, I'm not sure. What was your aperture here?
I was shooting at 5.6, I
Okay.
believe.
So, if I was doing that, looking at that now, the thing that's bothering me is the distraction of the texture of her skin and the inside of her palm,
Hmm.
because it looks a little bit distorted and not pretty. which, we like the smooth skin. Like her front arm is really pretty. It's very well lit, it's very defined, but it looks very pretty and feminine. And we're losing that a little bit on the back one because of the texture and the way that the shadow and light is falling on it. It's making the skin look really rough. So I would
Okay.
be inclined to go in and just very, very slightly probably select that arm and just give it a very, very soft blur. Very subtle, just to take some of that down so that it's not so pointed, because I keep going down to her fingers on that backhand, which is not where you want people looking.
Yeah.
Um, I like the texture of her dress. I like the movement and the flow of it. But this dress is one of the ones that probably could have stood to be steamed or ironed before it got put on. There's a lot of the texture in the dress that's wrinkles and not
Movement.
the
Yeah.
ribbons of the movement flowing through. So I think it's distracting a little bit. Um, but I like that, as high key as this is, and as much as you were playing with this really bright, soft light, that you kept most of the edges and we didn't lose too much of it. The underside of her far arm, you start to lose a little bit of the defining line,
Hmm.
but not enough that it loses it for me. I really want to love the motion in her hair, but I don't think her hair is quite long enough. So it's just starting to look like unkept, I think, and really stringy, which I
Okay.
don't think is really flattering. It doesn't lose it for me, but again, if you go back to other images and look towards movie posters and things that have like the heroine character, the hair still looks done, even though there's motion going through it. And this is looking a little bit straggly for me.
Okay.
So, as particularly, I think because it's shorter, like I would have liked to have seen some more coming off the side of her chin and her cheek in the front. And we're just getting one or two little twigs as opposed to the whole tree kind of feel to it. So
Okay.
I might have actually gone in and just stolen some of her hair from the back and put it, cloned it and brought it to the front just to fill it in a little bit. Or I'd be inclined to take the whole front out and just have all the motion be to the back of her. um, Things to play with. But I'm nitpicking at it. Overall, it's really well exposed. I see a lot of high key ones that are losing a lot of the definition because they're overexposed, and they go, "Oh, it's high key." No, it's not. It's overexposed. There's a difference. Um, so this is a really beautiful high key image. I think you could punch up the contrast just a little bit and pull up the shadows a little bit darker, not too much because you're almost there, but I think it would have benefited, and probably dodging and burning just a little bit along her face, because right now my focus wants to go from her elbow to her fingertips on that front hand rather than to her face. And in portraiture, if her face is in the shot, the focus is always on the face and the eye and the expression, and that's secondary for me in this one.
Okay.
um, but overall, I still think it's a really beautiful shot, and I still am seeing just tons of growth and improvement from where you're starting. So I'm going to give it a 2. I think it's commendable. I think there were a couple of things you could have did that would have really set it over the top, but overall, it's still a really beautiful image.
All right.
Was that
And
your 5?
no, this is my last one.
Okay. All right. Tell me about this one.
Okay, so this one was the favorite for when I did my post in level 8.
Hmm.
Um, this one was from the same series. This is another photographer. We had tried shooting beforehand, and he was not happy with what he was producing. And so he came in and he wanted to do this pose, and he's very ADD. So he specifically had his own idea when he came in about how he wanted his body. And so I had to try and find a way to direct him to where we weren't clashing with each other. And so in the end, the positioning is something that I worked with him on. And so we could get that symmetry and that line that he liked.
Hmm.
Um, However, the coloring and the way I post-processed it a little bit was more directed and is not exactly the way I wanted it originally. I think it's too pink and too red. Um, but the more that I look at it, because of the darkness of his glasses, even though you can see that there's something in it, it's not just me making his glasses dark. And
Right.
they're so dark blue, and then how there's this blue and green in his shirt as it fades out, I begin to like the colors more, and so I kept them as opposed to changing it to the way I wanted after it was done. My biggest issue was, in order to do this image um, the way I wanted to, I had him so close to the octagon that I did blow out his armpits, which still
Mm.
bothers me. And I don't really know quite how to correct that without changing the levels of the entire image, which I like the light pretty much everywhere else except his armpits. So,
So there's actually a trick that I use a lot if I get into this, and this is totally cheating. But this is where the joy of Photoshop comes in, where because I noticed that too, and that was going to be one of the things that I brought up. It's really easy for you to go up to the top of his arms along his shoulder line because it's the same color fabric and the same lighting, and pull the edging from that is very defined, and take a selection of that, reverse it and flip it and line it up, and then bleed that into where it is so that it'll create the illusion of the line continuing. So you essentially just overlay it. And then so you wouldn't lose the entire highlight the same way that you have the bottom of his chest fading out and you can see the shirt fade into nothing. You can
uh-huh.
essentially do that with the other one. It's just time consuming. So this would be a really good image. If you don't know how to do that, or if it's difficult to explain vocally as opposed to showing you,
Yeah.
but your karma points when you get to sphere 1, you're allowed to trade them in at any time at a rate of 1 point per minute for one-on-one time with me. So you could go, look, I'm giving you 30 of my points, and I'm giving you this image, and I want you to teach me how to retouch this, fix the armpits, because it's making me crazy. And you and I will sit down one-on-one, and I'll do a tutorial for you and walk you through the process of how to do that. But that's a simple fix, and it's totally something I would have done because it is specifically on his left-hand side because the white bleeds up into
Mm-hmm.
such a unique shape because it's following the wrinkling on the sleeves. I would have liked to have seen the light that's on the edging of the aviators kind of come more to the middle. I think that would have made it stronger because they're so black in comparison to everything else that it's giving him almost like a skull-like quality,
Uh-huh.
which kind of feeds into like the badass kind of feeling with the mohawk and the pose and everything he's doing. But I can't get over the fact that this pose looks a lot like my 7-year-old when he's running around trying to be Superman. I just don't think it was like quite there. Like he's like, I'm flying. Like that's all I see when I look at it. So it was really, really close. I can see where both of you were going with it, but I just don't think you quite hit the mark. Quite hit the mark with it, and I'm not sure what it is. It may actually be because we fade out his midsection below, so it's giving even more of an inclination that he's coming forward and out, and all I see is like little kids playing Superman and pretending to fly. I do like the coloring on it. It's like almost like reverse butterfly lighting. Like instead of having the shadow right at the nose, like you have this really strong highlight under his nose that's making it a good feature, which will only work for people that don't have big noses. Like you couldn't do that for me because I would be really self-conscious of it. And my husband, good Lord, he'd look like Pinocchio. Um, but I like the starkness of it, and I like all of the texture that you're getting in the motion of him pushing back with the lights and the shadows on the wrinkles of the shirt. So there's other things too, like I like the veining in his arms, and that makes him look really muscular. Like you're getting a lot of definition for it being high key, which I really like. The thing that bothers me is that his face looks sharp, and then it kind of softens with the light and with the aperture, but then his hands are super sharp. So it's not making sense because they're definitely behind him. So visually, like that's messing me up. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that's an editing thing, and or just the way the
No.
lighting was hitting it. But are you seeing that?
Yeah,
Like,
I am, but I that honestly, that has I did not mess with the sharpness of the image.
Okay.
Um, so
So my guess is because his hands are closer to the light, and going behind, and there's so much texture on your hands, so many planes of existence because of the way that
mhm,
your fingers and your muscle and bone structure works, that it's creating very strong, defined lines on his hands.
mhm.
Whereas his elbows and the fronts of his arms are kind of a smooth transition and they're away from the light, so there isn't anything for them to catch. So it's actually the positioning of the hands going behind and just the planes that you have them at, that the light was falling correctly across them to really accentuate all of that muscle and bone definition, where there isn't as much on the arms. But it's making me crazy, so I would say go in and soften them, with a little bit of dodging and burning and a little bit of blur, just to take it away so that the focus stays on his face and doesn't want to branch out to his arms on either side. Um,
So would you suggest just softening the hands or softening the hands and adding definition to the arms?
Probably just softening the hands because it falls off really nicely, and you have all of this information going on visually and with the light at the top of his shoulders to like right along his chest line with
Okay.
the shirt and stuff. That should be the focus. The rest should fade out. So I would probably lighten up the hands a little bit because they're also, look at how dark his thumb is, particularly the left one, and how much in shadow it is compared
Mhm.
to the arms and the elbow going up. See how it like goes like from darkness to light to darkness? That's why you
Yeah.
want to jump there visually. So lightening them up a little, and really like it's as simple as just setting your paintbrush to like a 0% hardness and
Mhm.
probably like maybe a 10 to 20% opacity, and just sampling the white directly around the hands, whatever that color is, and
Mhm.
just brushing over it really, really lightly. And less is more. Like this is one of those times where putting it at 5% and going over it a couple of times until you get it right is better than setting it at 30% and having it be too much.
Yeah.
Want to be able to blend into the upper arms, but you can see that shadow continue from like the edge of his thumb to like halfway up his forearm before it starts to lighten up. So being able to sort of fade that in a little more where it continues to fade out in the same manner that his abdomen is fading out from the chest, that's what you're looking for. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, but overall, I still think it's a really good image, and I'm liking the difference in your styles. Like, there's a very distinct style in your high key images, as opposed to the darker and more moody and emotional ones. But they're still both to the point now that I feel like I could put those images in with 10 other high key images and pick out Ava's, which is what I'm looking for. That's where your voice starts to come in. So, I'm going to give it a 2. It's not my favorite image from you, but I still think it would make your portfolio for me. um, so yeah, I think it's commendable. I don't think it quite like exceeded the mark, but I do still really like it as a photograph, and I'm still definitely seeing improvement with you.
Yay!
Yay! So you passed with flying colors. So you're going to turn off the screen share.
All
You're
right.
through your level 9, and let's talk about how I'm an overachiever and I'm custom building everybody spheres, which I shouldn't be doing until level 30, but I'm going to do it now because I love you and I'm excited about it. Um, so how are you feeling from last time we sat down at level 4 to level 9?
Well, the big thing for me is confidence. I was really, really struggling with my confidence and being okay with creating the art I actually wanted to create versus creating the art that I think people would like. And so I think that's really the biggest change between level 4 and now, because now I am comfortable when people ask me, hey, will you shoot this for me, or will you do this way for me? I'm comfortable with saying no and saying
That's
that's,
good. That's a huge thing.
so that was a really big thing, because I would never do that before. I'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I can shoot it like this or shoot it like that, and it always ended up making me feel less than because it wasn't what I wanted. Um,
Right.
and now I'm lost. say your
Okay.
question
Okay,
again.
so here's what we're doing. So the way that Sphere 1 works, you're done level 9. We're going to elevate you up and you'll get an invitation to rejoin as a Sphere 1 for levels 11 through 20. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be sending me an email and telling me all about your experience at the Arcanum and all the ways in which I'm awesome and all the ways in which I suck. And what you would like to see changed, constructive criticism. This is your chance to get back for all of the times that I've been telling you that you need to improve. You're doing the same thing for me, basically. And then the way that I am doing Sphere 1 for my people is you have two choices. Trey has built out the first 20 levels, and there's a guide in the Arcanum, like the leveling guide, that says that this is what you're doing, which is pretty much what we did for the foundation levels. We followed that and then just adapted it. Like, he suggested everybody post 5 images for level 1. I had you post the one image you've created that you felt defined you. So it was just an adaptation of that. Your second option for Sphere 1 is that you and I sit down for the next 20 minutes right now and we talk about where it is that you're looking to go and what it is that you're looking to do. And your map is totally customized and completely different from anybody else that's in Sphere 1. The concept being that the foundation levels were essentially a chunk that we were all going down. Now we're branching off into our own direction. So it's meant to put you on your path. So the question, my dear, becomes, if I could wave my little fairy godmother wand and get you exactly where you want to be when you walk out the door of House Lark at level 20, where is that? What does that look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish?
Well, I've said this a couple of times. My biggest thing is that I am not going to strictly be working on photography, that it is my goal to become a multimedia artist. And so taking photography and painting and sculpting and putting them together, as well as when it comes to photographic styles, I'm working with double and multiple exposures now. And I
Okay.
want to, one of the biggest challenges I've had is when I've talked to people, I say I want to do astrophotography, I want to do painting, I want to do sculpting with clay and with epoxy. And people tell me, well, you have to focus. You can only do one. You can't mix them. It's impossible. And a lot of time I've kind of let that hold me back. And now I'm at a point to say, well, you know what? I can do it all. I just can't do it all at once. I have to figure out how to go through and say, okay, well, I've learned this. Now let me learn this and let me put them together and let me add to it, like making a cake and getting all those
Right.
ingredients and learning to work with them. And so that's what I
Yep.
want to do.
And
And
that's
so
exactly what I was going to
that's my
say. You're
goal.
leaps and bounds ahead. It's a misconception to believe that you have to focus on one and only one, and you have to choose. You don't have to choose which one. You have to choose which one first.
Yes.
It's like watching, if you've ever been to a circus or seen when they do the plate spinning. You have to get the first plate spinning strong enough and fast enough that you can step away from it to start the second plate. Otherwise it comes crashing to the ground. And a lot of time the problem is that we all start at this level, okay, and the
Mhm.
gold is right here. And the problem is that we dig down to like here and then we go, well, maybe I'll try this, and we dig down to here and the gold's right below and we go, why aren't we striking it? Why aren't we hitting the sweet spot with any of these? It's just because we haven't dug down far enough. So that being said, if you had to choose between the photography, the painting, and the sculpture, which one has the most to your heart? Which one do you really get up and want to do all day, every day? I can't choose. I
Honestly,
love all my children. Yeah,
well,
it's okay. Which one's your favorite right now?
I could say that of the three, painting is the one that is the furthest from. That's like the end,
Okay.
the furthest one away. With sculpture and photography, I'm kind of half and half, but at the same time, I think I'm in a slightly unique kind of place because I am a sculpture major at school right now.
Okay.
So I'm literally working to try and get into the BFA program in sculpture.
Okay.
So with the Arcanum, I still want to work on photography, but I want to work on photography with the understanding and end goal that I'm not trying to solely be a photographer. And
Okay.
so I believe that most likely the custom plan would be better for me just because the generic plan is for photographers trying to make a business as photographers and be photographers, and that's not what I'm trying to do.
Okay, well, it depends on the option. Like John, we built his. He's not looking to make money from photography at all. If he does, it's awesome, but he loves his job and he makes really good money. So he's really, his sphere one is totally focused on the artistry and building his voice and building his team and comes from a very creative place. Other people, like Nicole, quit her job and moved across the country and is just she's in it right now and going 100% for that. So business, like we sat down for an hour and looked over her pricing lists and stuff like that because that's where her focus is. For you, we've been talking about both. You're going to school for it right now. You're putting all your heart into it, but ideally, this is what you want to do for your career, right?
Yes, and this is a kind of a dilemma that I'm having because most people they get their bachelor's and then they're done. And my goal educationally is I want to go and get my graduate degree and possibly even get a PhD. So I'm not looking to be in school for 2 years and then being able to do a business. I'm still looking at least when I'm done with my bachelor's another 6 years of college before I'm done. And so
Okay.
I have to do both at the same time. I have to go to school and do the business because I'm not going to wait another 6 years before I can start building my business to make
Okay, and
money.
I'm totally cool with that. A lot of people are pulling double duty. Allie right now is managing 4 children and the stay-at-home mom thing and starting her business. So it's just different people are balancing different things. A lot of people are balancing careers that they're hoping to get away from and starting new ones. They're balancing school and careers. It really just depends on your effort and how much time you're willing to put in. So let me ask you, why are you trying to go so far in school? What's your motivation for that and what's the reward?
For me, there is a kind of connection to not just people but to art that I get in the school environment, the university environment, that I don't get anywhere else, especially because my work is about interfacing different mediums. And so, I mean, it's easy for me to do photography online and to be in these kind of classes with the Arcanum and this type of training. But it's a lot more difficult for me to go out and buy a potter's wheel and learn how to do ceramics. And then at the same time, considering that I'm trying to learn how to mold all of these mediums together and grow them at the same time, there's an there is a part of it that is part psychology, part philosophy that I am also trying to learn because I really feel that art is intrinsic to who we are as people, that it's almost infused in us. And to kind of study that philosophy a little bit more, I do feel that I need to be in that educational environment, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to PhD. That PhD level would be a PhD, a doctorate in philosophy of art, and talking
Okay.
about how art connects and makes us human.
Okay, so we're trying to blend photography, painting, and sculptures. In an ideal scenario, what does that look like for you?
Okay,
Like, are we talking gallery shows where there's your sculptures and then your paintings on the wall and your prints on the wall? How does that work for you? What's the ideal scenario?
the ideal scenario is that I guess I'd be called an installation artist, where you make a large installation inside of a museum, and then it has smaller pieces of different types that work within it. So you might walk into a room that's made entirely of glass, and then there are these sculptures that work within that glass room to create smaller and larger parts of a big ideal or a
Okay.
big idea. I believe, and of course I could be wrong, but I believe that the the way I have seen it is that most likely I would do smaller pieces commissioned for people, like 12 to 24 a year, and that would be it, and those would be personal commissions. And when I wasn't working on those personal commissions, I would be working on a larger project that would span an entire year. And so each
Okay.
year I would have the time to work on that.
Your larger project, that would take up a year. Do you have an idea of what you want that to be for this year? Because it's the beginning of a year. It's a great time to start.
Yes, actually, this year, since I have to do my BFA submission, the BFA submission that I'm working on is on the theory of whooshing, the four pillars of destiny, and the Chinese zodiac. There are these three different parts that interconnect, and they talk about how people's destinies align with each other.
Okay.
And so you have the four pillars of destiny are time, so it's minute, day, month, year. And then you have the five elements which interact with each other, and they're five elements of life. And then you have the 12 animals of the zodiac, and they work almost as wheels. And
Okay.
um, and so
Did I
they
miss
show how
one?
people connect. And
We have the time, the elements, the animals. What's the fourth one?
no, the time is those are the four pillars of destiny. So
Okay.
one pillar is the year, then the month, then the day, and the minute. And
Okay.
so I am trying to sketch out and work out how I want to display it and all the different parts and what's going to represent what. But each piece right now are photographs that are going to be multiple exposures that will be embedded in epoxy resin, and then somehow I'm going to connect them, and then they're going to be on this huge tapestry that will be on the floor that will be painted and designed, and they'll be placed on it almost like puzzle pieces that go onto this larger tapestry. So my
Interesting.
hope is that I will do enough of this ahead of time. So for my BFA exhibition or trial is in May, that they will give me permission to not only join the BFA program, but continue this project till the end of the year. If not, I'm going to do it myself anyway, but it would be kind of nice to have
Good
access to
answer.
their supplies.
Right.
So, and that's kind of where I'm going with that. So this year is about whooshing, or
Okay.
whooshing, sorry.
Okay. So we're focusing on being a multimedia artist and doing installation art and doing 12 to 24 commissions a year and having a large project that spans the year that's taking up your time and energy in between the commissions. That's the ideal scenario. Let's talk
Yeah,
about what that looks like in terms of financial success for you.
that is where I completely have zero idea. I
Okay, well, let's take a break. Are you working right now or are you just going to school?
I'm just going to school.
Okay, so your husband is breadwinner at the moment. He's financially providing for you?
No, I do have my own income that comes
Okay.
in, but it's not directly related to any type of work. But yes, I'm actually the breadwinner.
Okay. So
It's not
okay.
much bread though.
That's okay, good. Okay, so we know, so there's always two options when we're talking about money, especially when people go, I don't know. Which is fine. That's totally okay. So usually where we start out is what do you need to maintain your current lifestyle right now? How much money would I need to give you? How much money would you need to earn every month in order to maintain your lifestyle as it is now? Like how much do you usually bring in a month?
Okay, so um, if I did not have to put any money towards producing my art, but
Mm-hmm.
keep my lifestyle exactly the same,
Okay.
my income solely is what we would need to survive.
Okay. And
And
can you give
that's
me an estimate for that? How much is that?
it's about $3,500 a month.
Okay, so how much would you say would need to go back into your art? Would like $500 a month cover it if you had to make it work?
If as long as I had access to the school,
Okay.
yes. If I lost that space, then getting everything that I would need and upkeeping all that would be a lot more per
Okay.
month. So, and then my photography studio is closed. The studio that I share, it's closed until mid-February for renovations. So I don't have access to that right now either.
Okay.
The other consideration is that when I'm done with my bachelor's is when about my husband and I are hoping that we would be moving to whatever country that he gets transferred to. And so besides the money that I have to put away for my art, I have to save, $20,000 to relocate my family to whatever country it is that we have to relocate to.
Okay.
So that's also something that I have to put money away for. So it's a lot at once.
Okay. Okay, so right now we'll table that and we'll build that into sphere one. But right now we know that for you to survive as is in your current lifestyle, we're looking at about 3,500, not including any of the supplies and everything. But $3,500 in your back pocket every month would support your family and your home as you're currently living, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's good. Now let's talk about just a um, ideal scenario. We're at 3,500 for how you're living right now. When you think about not only having your dream job, but having your dream life and the kind of house that would be in and what kind of car you would be driving and how often you would be eating out because you hate doing dishes like me and you know, things that you like doing. Like Mike and I are big movie buffs, and we like going out to nice restaurants. Those are our two big things that we like doing. If
Hmm.
you're like a play person or things like that, however you see your ideal life, if I could snap my fingers and give you your night at the ball like Cinderella, but I can make that a 365 thing, what do you think that lifestyle would cost? Would you have to double your income, quadruple it?
I would say that combined with what my husband and I both make, we would need to make close to $10,000 a month.
Okay. So I'm of a very strong mind that it is wonderful to have somebody that you love that is a partner and that supports you, but you build your lifestyle to suit yourself on your own so that if for whatever reason things are not what they're supposed to be with your partner, you can pick up the slack because it's really nice. Like Mike just came home from Afghanistan. So it's not like a don't depend on your partner thing, but right now he's at home. He's loving being at home and spending some time with the kids and just breathing. Like you're at war will do that. We don't have to have a nervous breakdown about the fact that we don't have that paycheck because he makes really good money while he's deployed.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
yeah, like so it's nice. So he just came home and now there's like, almost $5,000 a month in income that isn't coming in and we're not sweating it because between what I make in shooting and what I make in teaching and my book sales and stuff like that, no big deal. We got it. Um,
So then I
so
would say if he wasn't working or he was out of the picture, whatever, for myself, totally, I would say probably 75 to $8,000 a month is what I would
okay.
need to make total.
Okay, so we're saying a minute ago you said 10,000. That was with the both of you. So here's what I'd like to do is I would like to build you a business plan to scale that would start with the idea of keeping you at that 3,500, which sustains your life as now, because that's the bare minimum. That's what we
Yes.
need. The rest
Yes.
is need versus want. But the idea is to scale that up so that we get you to the point where you're making $10,000 a month, which means your husband can absolutely still work and contribute income. And, then instead of making, if you're making 7,000 and he's bringing in three, now you can make 10,000 and he can bring in three and you can make 13. But if for whatever reason he gets hurt, he can't work, things aren't working, for whatever reason that money goes away, you
Yeah.
don't panic and go, how do I make that extra $3,000 to $5,000 a month? Because you have it. It's
Yeah.
really nice when nobody has to worry about money. And And it is like my husband was absolutely breadwinner, and when I first had my kids, like I was a stay-at-home mom, and he was taking care of all of us completely 100% financially. It's really nice for him to come home and me go, baby, if you want to go back to work, that's awesome. Go back to work because you love being a soldier and you like teaching and that's what you want to do. But if you want to stay home and play on the new, $3,000 shiny drum set I got you and play Call of Duty for the next 6 months, that's fine too. And for him to go, okay, I actually can do that without losing the roof over our heads. And, like it just gives us both the ability to have a lot of freedom. And it starts opening up possibilities. Like I'm teaching the workshop in London with Martin in June. It's really nice to be able to go, yeah, we can afford for both of us to go fly over there and teach, but then also to hang out and maybe go down to Austria while we're over there and go see the library that I want to see and go to the body painting festival without going, can we afford that? Can we afford that? We call that right side menu shopping, where you're like, oh, the lobster sounds amazing, but not at market price. It doesn't. Maybe I'll just have chicken. And we make decisions for our lives too, where we go, yes, I would love to have this car. Oh my God, it's so sexy and it rumbles underneath me and I want it. But I like the sticker price on that car, so we'll just be practical. Practicality is usually fear disguising itself as realistic thinking. So when you don't have to make your decisions based off of fear and you can make them off of what you want, that's a really good thing. So that's where I want to get you to.
Well, my goal is that those 12 to 24 pieces that I do each year, my goal is to have that cover the costs. So
the cost of creating them?
Well, not just cover the costs of creating them, but to cover the costs of creating so that I can work on my year-long piece without fear. Because the thing is that the works that I create, whether photographic or not, I only make one. And this is something else that people think I'm crazy about. You have a photograph, you should make 20. I'm like, no, it's one, it's created the way I want it, when I want it, and that's it, and when it's gone, it's gone. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the 12 to 24 pieces, so that they are unique, special pieces, solely created for the people who order them, nobody else, but that the cost of that covers my other costs. So let's say I go and I have this installation and I put it in a museum and it's great and I just spent a year of my life in it, and then nothing sells, then I'm not stuck in a big financial hole because I was hoping that those pieces would sell and they wouldn't. So, I mean, that's not crazy to think that, right?
I mean, it's a little crazy, but I'm fine with it being a little crazy because the Reliquarium project is crazy. And, me picking up a camera with no photography and no business experience and saying I was going to be one of the top photographers on the East Coast in 5 years, which, by the way, I did, was a little bit crazy. You have to be a little bit crazy in order to accomplish something incredible. That's why everybody thinks you're crazy, because normal people can't accomplish it, and most people are too afraid to try because failure is imminent. Absolutely. The odds are against you, and you're setting yourself up for failure. But here is the awesome thing about that, is that failure is a temporary condition. Nobody has ever failed at a single thing. They fucking quit. Yeah. Period. That's what it is. They got scared. They got frustrated. They thought it was too hard, and they gave up. Nobody ever failed at anything. They quit. So is it going to be difficult for you, and are you going to stumble? Yeah, but from hanging out with you the last 9 levels and knowing a little bit about you personally and watching you go through, you don't connect with people on these deep levels over these painful experiences because you've had a shiny, beautiful, princessy kind of life. Like, you just don't. The reason that you can tap into that and express that so potently is because you know what it's like to suffer. So that doesn't intimidate you the way it does the other people. When people have easy lives, it's almost a disservice to them because they become incredibly scared of the struggle because they haven't had to encounter it. And their fear of it is so much bigger than it is themselves. It's just one more thing you got over. And here's the thing is that no matter what life is thrown at you and how impossible it was and how frustrating it was and how despondent and how scary and how insurmountable it seemed, you have a 100% success rate of getting through everything that life has thrown at you so far. You've made
Yeah.
it through every single thing. And there are scars that we carry the rest of our lives. We don't get over everything, but we get through it.
Yeah.
And you will continue to do that. And it may be that you try these things and then realize that they don't work the way that you originally thought that they would, so you adapt, but you take the lessons of that process with you, and all of those lessons come from failure. So if there's any advice that I can give you going out that you carry with you beyond House Lark, it's that absolutely fail as much as you can, because you will learn from it and understand that it's not like people think that you're traveling down this road and there's two options. Either you're going this way and you're going to be successful, or you're going this way and you're going to fail. But it's not. It's here and failure, and here and failure, and here and failure. And success is up here. You have to fail in order to succeed. You have to, because that's how you learn and you grow, and you take that lesson and go, okay, well, that's not the way that I need to do this or how I want to do. You learn because you fail, period. Now, my only concern with your theory, and where I want a little bit of clarification, is that it is a really, really bold statement, but it's a statement of an artist to say, I'm creating one and only one, and that is the only one that exists. That's spoken like a painter. I understand that, because that's where I started out too. The problem is that they're not paintings, they're photographs, and you're doing them digitally. So how does that work? How does somebody buy one image? Are you never sharing these with the world? What happens after the image is created? How does somebody have one original photograph that is made in a medium that is designed to be reproduced?
Well, the thing is that what I'm trying to do is to embed all of my photography in epoxy so that they become sculptures. And so,
Ooh, okay, see, now I'm with you. Okay,
yeah,
continue.
so it's no longer going to be just a photographic print that's just matted and framed and put in glass. All of my photographs are going to be coated in resin epoxy. Some of them with their own colors, some of them in clear epoxy, and even the papers that they're printed on will react to the epoxy different, so they become basically relief sculptures. Even if it doesn't matter if it's flat, it doesn't matter if I put texture in it, but they become sculptures. And so it doesn't matter if I can go down the block to my local print shop and get my image printed however I want it printed. The epoxy process I do myself, and that's temperature controlled, and a lot of stuff goes into it. So I can say this is the only one, because if it gets damaged or destroyed, if I make another one, it's not going to be the same because of the handwork that goes into it.
Okay, so is it that we're creating individual and unique art pieces, or is it that we are creating a single art piece from a single image? Because this is the kind of stuff that will get you into trouble with your clients if they believe that they have the only, if I said that I wanted a custom Ava creation from the first image that you brought to critique, and then I see it on your website, and then somebody steals it offline and prints it, and I go, hey, that's supposed to be mine and only mine. Or you create another individual piece and I'm like, hey, I thought that was mine. So clarify that a little bit for me.
Okay, well, a good example would be I created an image with a model by the name of Scar in California in a workshop that we did. And I printed it out. It was this 20 by 20 on pearl paper, whatnot. I coated it. I put glass over it and bonded it. At the time, I did not know that putting glass and epoxy together on a print, if the glass broke, it would still damage the image. It's not something I do anymore, but I didn't know that at the time. I shipped it out to her as safely as I could, insured it and everything. And then in the process, she had it delivered to her 4 different times from the post office, and it broke. And the post office ended sending it back to me all bandaged up into what looked like a bandaged ball. It wasn't even a square anymore. She said, well, I mean, is there any way that you can make me a new one? And I said, no. I told her, I said, it took me it took me money and time and the process that it took me to create this for you. And there are no backs, in the form that you signed, that there's nothing that. And she's like, well, can't you just get it off the internet? And I said, if you got it off the internet and you printed it at the shop, it wouldn't have been the same hand worked image that I did for you. I said, I would really recommend that you not go and take it off the internet and just print it, but it's not going to be covered in epoxy. It's not going to be treated the same way that I would have done it for you, and it's not going to be the same piece.
Okay,
That's what
so
I would
that
say to
brings up,
anybody else.
so are you not looking to work with any clients for the sake of offering photography as a service? Like, owning a portrait studio is a service. What you're talking about is the product. So, when people come in and work with me shooting them is a service I'm providing. The prints, the boxes, whatever I give them, that's a product that they're getting. So are you not looking at people being able to hire you to shoot them?
Well, I would. I just don't know how I could do that, because the thing is that what I want to do is to create a unique piece for them. And so, especially since I'm moving towards double exposures, and a lot of my prints are now being made on transparencies so that you can see the epoxy work through the image, I wouldn't if someone came to me to do, they wanted to hire me to do their portrait, I wouldn't just be shooting an image, printing it out on paper, and matting and framing it for them. It would be
Okay.
something that would either be a wall relief hanging, or would be a freestanding photographic sculpture on their desk.
Okay, so let me stop you there, because here's where one of your discrepancies is going to come in, is that you're thinking like an artist in terms of galleries and museums and creating one-of-a-kind art. That's awesome.
Okay.
If you're trying to blend that with offering photography as a service where people can hire you, then you have to take into consideration what they want. Most people hire photographers so that they can get their photographs. So I can totally understand how if I hired you to create this, I would absolutely want an Ava original and this beautiful one-of-a-kind piece of art that nobody else could ever have, that was created by the hands of the artist. That's a very strong selling feature. However, if said piece arrives broken in a little taped up ball because the post office sucks, and you go, well, I can't create another one, especially if I invested in that session, I didn't get what I was supposed to get out of it. And if I was willing to say, okay, well, I'll just take the images, and you don't want them printed like that, that poses a problem, because what am I getting then?
I see what you're saying.
Right? I would be pissed as your client.
In this particular situation with the model, I was giving it to her as a gift. It wasn't something that she paid for. And then because she refused to pick it up, that's why I was like, I'm not going to make you another one, because it was a loss for me. Okay. But I do understand what you're saying.
Keep in mind, my clients, and I don't shoot time for print almost ever anymore, but when I do, they get treated just like my paying clients do, because they're paying with their time. Okay. So if I want them enough to work with them, where I feel like the value of adding them to my portfolio and working on a concept and them being the center of that concept is worth it for me to sacrifice the income that I make, then I have said that they have value. So I have to provide that for them. And and it's the same thing. If you're putting all this time and money in and you're charging accordingly and you're creating these one-of-a-kind pieces and they break, you're talking about a lot of more time and money investment. So even if you're insuring them, like let's say that this unique piece of art costs you $200 to make, okay, and 30 hours of time. And then you make it and you put it together and you send it out and it gets broken, you're not just, if you insure that for the $200 that it costs you to make and you're recouping that, you're still giving yourself another full work week to recreate a separate piece for it that's not going to be the original, and that you're going to be pissed off doing because the original one broke and you probably are over the project because you're like me. And you're like, no, I'm done with this, I'm on to the next thing. So okay. these are things to think of, and that I'm gonna ask you some tough questions in Sphere 1 about, so that we can kind of round it out. It's not impossible, and I love the fact that you're being bold, and I love the idea that there's one print made from each picture, because anytime that you make something rare, you increase the value of it. If there's only one, that's the kind of thing that 200 years from now, when nobody personally knows you, is still alive, that they're going to be like, oh my God, this artist Ava, she used to create all of these. And if you have an original artist, artist creation from Ava Bock, it's going to be totally different than having a JLark image where there was 200 limited edition prints, if that's the only one.
Yeah.
If you and I both go for the next 20 years and I release 100 images and you release 100 images, but I sell 200 of each and you sell one of each, we're talking 20,000 prints of mine and 100 of yours. And that's it. So the value of yours goes way up because it's much harder to come by, and they become much more sacred, and the want to preserve them becomes more. So the value that you're attaching to them now is not a monetary value.
Okay.
So that's a really good thing, because that allows you to up your rates. You're not talking about selling prints where other people are talking about selling matted and framed wall prints and going, oh, I'm making $800 per print for this 20 by 30 print, which is a good price because it's costing us about maybe $100 to $200, maybe $300, depending on the framing and archiving qualities. So we're still making that. You're talking about selling yours for $1,000 to $2,000, not $100 to $200.
Exactly, and that's kind of where I'm at with it, because I especially the epoxy process is not, it's very, very fickle. It's the type of thing, though, that I can say if something arrived to someone and it was damaged, I could absolutely fix it. It's the type of thing I can go back and I can fix. But if it keeps coming and because you're not taking care of it, it's broken, for me, I definitely have to revisit my feelings on that. But I know that there are artists that are in similar situations where they're at a place in their career where they'll say, well, if you buy it, we have to come install it to ensure that when it arrives at your house, it's perfect and that there are no issues.
And I'm totally cool with that. I think that's fine.
Yeah, eventually I want to get to that point. So.
Well, you can start out at that point. You can make that part of your policy, absolutely. That's just white gloving it. We used to do that even when I would do wedding prints. If they would order the wall prints, we would have built into the price that one of my technicians would come out and install it on the wall. Because if we didn't, it would sit on the floor in a closet for 2 years, and I would go visit them and it would still not be hung up just because they didn't get to it or they're not handy. So I'm totally fine with that. I don't create my art to sit in the back of the closets, and you didn't pay a couple $100. And it's amazing how fast time goes by that you're like, oh, that's actually been sitting there for a year and a half. I do that, So I'm totally cool with you setting it up that way. So we'll add that in as well. And then I think what it would be you doing some research on different companies, deciding if you want to sell only in your country or worldwide, and how you're going to connect with those people, and finding companies in different countries and different locations that can handle that for you, that you can trust to deliver it safely. Having all of the deliveries be signature, or if you're going to let them, leave them there so that they don't go back and forth and get bounced around. These are all things that we can consider. So we're about 15 minutes over. You are now officially my longest critique in the Arcanum, but there are people that are hanging tight with us. Like, we still have the viewers that are sitting in. So thank you to all of you guys. Last question. What do you think is your biggest obstacle that you're facing right now between where you are and where you want to be?
Well, I kind of answered this question the other day. The biggest thing for me is I allow my process to hold me back by not writing it down. I think I have to take everything to completion. I have to make everything perfect, and so I never get started on anything because I keep trying to make it perfect in my head before I start. And so I'm trying to work past that by now. Every day, any ideas that I have, I'm just writing them down and letting them go. But at the same time, I also have this impulsive urge to get started on things right away and not giving them the time they need, to think things through before I start. And so I'm trying to I really think that being impatient and striving for perfection is what's holding me back.
Being impatient and striving for perfection. Good thing I don't know anything about that. Okay. All right. I think I have enough information to build your Sphere 1. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to sit in. I want to go back over your level 4 and your level 9 critiques and just go over everything that you submitted so far. So it takes, give me 3 to 5 days. In the meantime, you're going to get the invite to go and join Sphere 1, and then you'll follow that up with, yay! And then you're going to follow that up with, you'll get an invite to the Artist Atrium, and that's all I'm saying about it. But it's cool, and you should go join it. And you're only allowed to join it after you're through and into Sphere 1.
Awesome.
Once you get into Sphere 1, while you're waiting for your custom sphere map to be built, there's a category called the Wishing Well. You want to go and focus on that. That is your assignment for this week. And I have an entire page of notes. And so I'm going to take all of that, and that's what your sphere map is going to be built out of. In the meantime, you'll drop me a line, and you'll tell me what you love and what you don't, and anything else that you're thinking of that we didn't get to talk to that comes to mind later that you really want to focus on or feel like you need help with, just drop me a line and include that so that I can find a way to build that in. Sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
You did so good. I'm so proud of you. And
I'm
really
happy I didn't cry.
I'm happy you didn't cry. It was just the first ones. I'm going to lose my reputation. It's going to be like the first Sphere 4 critique that everybody's going to bawl. So, but you did really well. And I want you to know that I am seeing immense amounts of growth in you, not only in terms of your art, but as an artist itself. And that stems from somewhere really deep within you, and I think that it's very brave and very courageous that you're willing to tap into those shadows in order to bring them to light, because that's what's creating a lot of the potency of the images. And I think when you start adding that ability to be intimate with the people that you're shooting and the artwork that you're creating with them, and you start adding to that your ability to express yourself through other mediums of art, and congregating all of that into this multimedia art form, that you are going to create art that is going to spawn conversation for centuries from now. You know, and there's a lot of people right now in our industry that are looking for attention and saying, here's my art, and pay attention and see the value and the merit of it. Your work isn't going to beg attention. It's going to command respect. And that lasts a lot longer. So,
thank you. See, now you're going to make me cry. Don't do that.
So I want to tell you that it has definitely been, it's been my sincere privilege to walk with you through the first 10 levels of the Arcanum, and I'm really excited to see where you go, because I think you and I both are going to sit down at level 19 and look at where you were at level 1 coming in as opposed to where you are. And when I'm getting invitations to gallery shows and seeing, you know, the invitations to your museum installations, I'm going to be like, she was one of mine. So bravo, you did very well.
Thank you.
Welcome to Sphere 1.
Yay!